For joining our next session of our Lunch and Learn Elevate with Element. So I'm really happy to introduce Larry. So Larry Anderson has spent the last 20 years partnering with small and medium-sized companies to strengthen their leaders and leadership team. His work includes individual leadership training, one-on-one performance coaching, and broader leadership and management development. Over the last 5-10 years, Larry has also collaborated with our tent division, giving him a valuable insight to our team at Element. So he does have an understanding and he does know some of our team. So I appreciate anyone that there were a handful of scenarios and questions that did come through. So we did have Larry incorporate them in his presentation. But let's keep this an open forum. If there's questions that come up, please feel free to throw them in the chat box or raise your hand and we'll make this through. We want to make this efficient and productive for everyone and make sure that everyone can take something home from this. And then any follow-up questions, you can shoot myself, Bree, DJ, or Fatima an email, and we can follow up with Larry if you had any further questions. So we'll pass it along to you, Larry.
Thank you, Kate. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Kate, I'll just mention, if I don't notice somebody's raised their hand or put in a question, just interrupt me and we'll go to that question.
Yeah. So Fatima, DJ, and Bree, if you can keep an eye out as well. Thank you.
Yeah, just let me know and I'll be quiet and we'll ask the question. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk through 3 things before I get into the scenarios. What is a difficult conversation? Why are they difficult? And then I'm going to give you some key elements to consider when you're walking into a difficult conversation to help you better prepare. And then I have 9 scenarios that Kate forwarded to me, and we'll bring each one of those up. What I'd like to do is have anybody in the audience that would like to take a stab at how they would do that. Then I can also share some of my insight as to how I might handle it differently, or if I would handle it the same way. We'll go from there. Does that sound good? All right. So the first question is, what makes a conversation difficult? Does anybody have a thought on that? On conversations you've been involved with before, what do you think makes it difficult?
Might feel uncomfortable.
Okay, very good.
I would say potential consequences.
Consequences. What do you mean by consequences of the talk itself?
Well, you could have a situation where somebody is potentially going to quit. You have a situation where somebody maybe needs to be fired, and you got to figure out how to make sure that there's no liability and consequences that come out of the whole thing.
Oh, okay, very good. Anybody else?
Strong emotions.
Emotions, absolutely, 100%. So I see.
I also think with this industry, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go, Christina.
With our industry, it's also just no time. So there's a lot of last minute things where on their end, it might be pressing, but we're dealing with 50 events and they're dealing with 1, but we still have to manage to keep them calm, cool, and collective while they're dealing with their emergency and we're trying to fix it.
Yeah, great points. So let me share with you 4 of the biggest aspects I see that make a conversation difficult. The first one is what I call differing perceptions. The word perception is interesting because it's how we see the world, how we see the situation we're in. And the challenge is that it depends on the filter we're looking at the situation through. So if I've worked with Element in the past, and I've had a bad experience, I am looking at the next situation through that bad experience filter. And I'm going to bring that to my conversation. If I'm looking at it through a filter of, I don't feel supported, I'm going to look through it through that filter. So perception is how I'm seeing the reality, the situation. Perception is reality. So what I believe to be true is true to me. So that's a big part of a difficult conversation, is how each person, how entrenched they are in what they believe to be true. So let's keep that in the back of our mind today as we're working through. The next is assumptions about intent. This is really getting down to the relationship you have with the individual you're going to be having the conversation with. If they believe your intent is selfish or is all about what you want to get out of something, you're going to automatically be in a conflict versus a conversation, right? So you have to remember the topic today is difficult conversations, not difficult arguments. So we're not here to argue with people. It's about trying to have a conversation to go from here's where our situation is, here's where we would like to end up. So if I'm making assumptions about your intent, I'm assuming that you have either good intentions or bad intentions. Typically, if we're going into a difficult conversation, there's a better chance that the assumptions will be on the negative side than on the positive side. So if you are the leader that's going to have this conversation with someone, the first thing you have to say to yourself is, am I making any assumptions about this person's intent on the topic I'm about to cover with them? You can't control what the other person's assumptions are, but you can try to check your own assumptions and say, am I basing those assumptions on what? And then from there, you can start to better prepare yourself. Number 3 is emotion. I know you all know this, and I don't need to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Don't have a difficult conversation when you are emotional. No matter what, if you are going into a difficult conversation, the other person will have some level of emotion in the process. The challenge for you is to do your best to keep the emotions lower so that we can have more of a logic conversation than an emotional conversation. But simply the act of, hey, can I see you in my office? Or as was mentioned earlier, my tent didn't show up on time, or something where emotions are rising, you matching that emotion back is only going to make things worse. It's going to turn it from a conversation to an argument. So again, if you are getting emotionally charged, you have to remove yourself from that conversation and pick it up at another time. If the other person cannot control their emotions, I strongly recommend you do your best to cut it off and see if we can catch this at another time. Some people cry easily. I know I've been in conversations with people and they start crying. We haven't even said anything to each other yet. They just get emotionally charged and they cry. So crying isn't always a red flag, like we need to stop. But it's setting the framework up front, which we'll get into in a couple minutes, so that the person understands that while this is an important topic that we need to address and we need to correct, we're not here to beat the crap out of you. We're here to have a conversation about how we can be adults and work our way through this. And the last one is a mindset. A lot of times, difficult conversations are about who was wrong, about blame. And as soon as we get into a blame conversation, we are in conflict. We are now in an argument. We are now putting the other person in a position to defend themselves versus take responsibility for something. So my advice to you is to focus more on what went wrong, not so much who was wrong. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to tackle the who was wrong, but I don't want to start the conversation off with you being completely defensive and not open to having a conversation with me. Instead, I'd rather say, this tent order was late. So let's talk about what happened to cause it to be late, not why were you late with this tent order. So that simple language up front can lower people's anxieties and make them more open to having that type of conversation. So again, when you're about to go into a difficult conversation, make sure you're looking at how are we going to be perceiving this? Is that person perceiving it this way, and am I perceiving it a different way? What reality are we dealing with here? Jump into assumptions. What assumptions am I making about this person? And then hopefully through your leadership actions, they feel your intent is genuine and not selfish. Thirdly is your emotions. Are you making sure that you are trying to respect the other person's emotions but not let them get out of control? And then lastly is that frame of mind about let's not blame each other. Let's take responsibility for this fact that this is an issue. Let's try and work our way through it. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that slide before I move on? Okay. So why do we avoid difficult conversations? Anybody want to jump in with that? Why do you avoid them if you do?
Avoiding conflict.
Just avoiding conflict in general, yes. Anybody else?
Fear of reprisal.
Yes. What would happen if this happens, right? Could this person get angry?
Timing of the conversation.
Say that one more time.
Timing of the conversation.
Yes, timing is huge. There's nothing worse than something happened and we try to talk about it 6 months later and it just loses all of its context. Or we try to talk about it when everybody's really heated and then we can't have a conversation anymore. Those are all great answers. The biggest reason we avoid them is because we tell ourselves stories about them. We convince ourselves about the conversation we're about to have. I'm sure many of you who have had difficult conversations, if you waited until the next day or the day after, you maybe had a sleepless night, or you had a bit of sick to your stomach in the morning before you had to have the conversation because you were working yourself up. So I just put a few in here. We convince ourselves that talking about the problem may be worse than resolving it. Somebody mentioned that what are the consequences of this? We don't want to feel bad and we don't want the other person to feel bad. So a lot of times there's that, I don't want the person to feel bad. So you have to remember, as a leader, if you were having a difficult conversation with someone, something has happened to cause this. And that something to happen is a combination of you as the leader and that individual that you're having the conversation with. So it's not like we just decided today to pick something random and have a difficult conversation. We're having this because there's been a buildup of something happening over time. It could be that you have addressed things with that person before, but they're not making the improvements required. Or it could be they feel you haven't done what your part to help them improve, that you've talked about, things that you've talked about in the past. So you've both contributed to this situation in some way. So the feeling bad is only if you make it focused on a blame conversation. If it's a resolution conversation, we shouldn't feel bad. We should feel happy that we're resolving this issue and moving forward. We may hear things in the conversation about ourselves that we don't want to hear. Some leaders feel that it is a one-way street. I am having this difficult conversation because you, the employee, are the problem. And I've never really seen it that black and white. Usually the leader has contributed in some either large way or small way to this. And that could be simply by tolerating bad behavior for too long. And now it's come to a head. But if we would have addressed that behavior months or years ago, it wouldn't be this difficult conversation now. So that's on the leader. It could be very unclear expectations that you've set with that person, and they were never really on the same page with you about what you were trying to accomplish. And now the results are coming to fruition and they're not what you wanted. And now you're upset. But then when you go back and look at the details, oh, maybe I wasn't as clear as I could have been. So I find that the leader does contribute to a lot of these things. If you take the time to think of it, it helps you ground yourself before the conversation and realize, hey, I've contributed a little bit to this. Maybe the employees contribute a lot more, but now we can find a way out of this. We talked about emotions. I remember years and years ago, the first person I had to let go, she cried a lot. I was not prepared. I ended up saying, okay, you're not fired. You can stay on. It was a terrible thing. And then she got worse. And then it got, of course, that next conversation was even worse because we really had to fire her then. And I also had to get some backup because I wasn't prepared. So understand that emotions can happen and that just don't do your best not to match them. So if someone starts yelling at you, don't yell back. That's not going to help. And lastly, of course, where's the conversation ending? Sometimes people take a difficult conversation and they look for payback, and that's really deep and dark. We don't want that. That's not resolution. That's just somebody feeling that they were chastised or yelled at versus having a conversation. So if you have a conversation, and I'm going to show you some steps to walk through in just a minute, you shouldn't fear this, because you should see that we're working to resolution. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this slide before I move on? All right. So here are 7 tips for you to have a better difficult conversation. Now, it sounds like an oxymoron. How do I have a better difficult conversation? But these are seven tips for you. So the first one, and this deals with what I said earlier about perception, is you need to deal with facts versus opinions. The challenge for us is many people believe their opinions are facts. So facts can be proven. That's really sort of the test of what a fact is. So for example, if you need to have a chat with an employee that is late on a regular basis, you have dates and times that that person was late. That's a provable fact. So while that person can say to you, well, I wasn't late that much, and then you can pull out the calendar and say you were actually late 7 times this month. And now we're talking about a fact versus, well, it's not that bad, which is an opinion, versus here's the 7 dates and times you were late. So do your best to get facts. Now, my advice to you is, when sitting down to have a difficult conversation, the first thing I say out of my mouth when they sit down is, Joe, we are here today to talk about this. I set the table right off the bat with, this is what we're here to talk about. I don't start with how you doing or any of that stuff or beating around the bush. I get right to it and I say, this is the specific thing we are here to talk about today. And what I want to do is I want to share the facts I have around this, and I want to make sure we're both on the same page about the facts I have and the facts that you have, and make sure that we're looking at these through the same lens. Right off the bat, we get to the point that the person understands that we're not going to be talking about opinions here. We're going to be talking about facts. If they come back with, I feel, or I think, or I believe, those are opinion-based statements. Those are not fact-based statements. So while their opinions and their feelings are important, which I'll get to in just a second, we want to make sure we're doing our best to stick to facts, okay? Because facts can be proven, and facts can give us a real picture of what it is we're dealing with. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, I like to share with the person the impact their behavior has had on me and or the team, or whoever the person is or people are that the behavior is affecting. So I talk about behavior because a lot of people say, I'm having a difficult conversation about this person's performance. Well, performance comes after behavior. So behaviors always drive someone's performance. So if someone isn't performing well, meaning they're not hitting their numbers or they're not doing the specific things you want done, it's because a behavior is in place that is wrong. So I like to address the behavior, and I like to talk about the impact. Now, the impact needs to also be fact-based. It can't just be, I feel, but it's, here's how it's affecting the team. Joe, when you are late, I then have to reassign your tasks to the other members of your team. So what that does is it puts everybody else behind, and now it puts extra pressure on everyone in the team. That is a fact, and that's an impact on the team that Joe's lateness is providing to the group. Does everybody understand? So I hope you're getting how that works together. So again, it's not a blame thing, but it's the impact of it, that the lateness is causing the team to feel overwhelmed or behind. Now, what I need to do is I need to see how Joe's doing with this, okay? Because I don't want to just come in and give Joe a a 2x4 to the forehead of here's all this bad stuff you're doing. I need to now have Joe talk about it. So here's what I want him to share how he's feeling about this conversation. Your job is not to show sympathy, but to show empathy. And they're very different. Empathy is trying to see the world through their point of view, trying to understand it, even if you don't agree with it. And that's the real critical part of that is I'm trying to see your world and understand it, but I don't have to agree with it. Sympathy is more, oh, I feel bad for you. I see what you're saying. I'm on your side. That's not what we want here. We want empathy. Joe, I can understand that starting at 7 o'clock is early. I appreciate that. However, when you took on this role, you knew we started at 7 o'clock. So let's talk about how can we make this work? Are you still committed to things? And then we can get into a deeper conversation. The point is we need to have Joe share how he's feeling as well. And as he's sharing what he's feeling, I'm trying to see the world. I'm trying to see that perception of how he's seeing things. I'm trying to understand it, but I'm not forced or I don't have to agree with it. And that's the big part of this is empathy over sympathy. Moving on to number 4, and I mentioned this earlier, this is that blame versus responsibility conversation. I want to focus more on what than the who. So in this case, there is only one who, it's Joe, and he's late. However, let's talk about why you're late. What is going on? Is it simply the 7 o'clock start time? Do you have trouble with your car? Is there a childcare thing? Like what's the thing behind it? Let's talk about that. Then I want to talk about his intent. Is his intent that he would like to be part of the team? Is his intent, would he like to contribute to the team? Is his intent that he'd like to stay here with us? That he'd like to be part of what we're trying to build, what we're trying to do? I want to learn that from him because that tells me what kind of commitment he will be having to a potential solution or not. If his language is around everything is unfair, then he's feeling victimized. He's feeling like he has no power. He's feeling like he doesn't really want to contribute to this conversation. He just feels like he's being yelled at or in trouble or whatnot. If he comes back with, well, I can try this or I can try that, or I'm not sure how to do that, now he's open to solutions or discussions around solutions. So that means that I'm willing to work with Joe because he's now willing to take some responsibility for his part in this difficult conversation. Number 5 is common ground. I've had a lot of difficult conversations that I would say are incredibly difficult, where I've been an hour into this conversation and I'm thinking there's no hope of finding a way out. And they were incredibly difficult conversations. And then all of a sudden, you find something you can agree on, and you have to grab a hold of that and build on it. So for example, in our Joe scenario, if he said, well, I really like working here. I just really have a hard time getting in at 7. It's okay. What is it? Is it waking up at 7? Or waking up in time to be here? Is it your car? Well, actually, it really has to do with my childcare. Okay, now we're at least peeling the onion back to get to the root cause of the situation. So, do I have solutions I can offer, Joe? That's another part of this conversation. Maybe you don't, maybe you do, but at least you're getting to the point where he is interested in solutions and there's something there that you can build on. Can he have a later start time? Do we change Joe's role? Do we move Joe to a different team? I don't know. What are the solutions available? And then we find something that we can build on together. If you can't find common ground, my advice to you is to say to that person, it seems like you don't want to resolve this. This is putting it back on them to look in the mirror and say, are you willing to take any responsibility for the fact that we're having this conversation? It seems like you don't want to resolve this. I usually find that causes the person to go one of 2 ways. Either, yes, I do, and then now it forces us to dig in harder to find a solution, or you're right, I don't, and then you could be leading down to a termination type of conversation, which is different. And I don't want to get Kate all mad at me, but that's where we send Joe off to Kate to be to be let go. I'm just teasing. So the common ground is incredibly important. And like I mentioned before, I had this one conversation we were an hour into it. And as a matter of fact, it was probably conversation number 3 over about a month. We were an hour into it and I was exhausted and I was ready to give up, to be honest with you. And I just said to this person, what do you like best about what you do? And that question caused them to find something that they still liked about their job. And I grabbed a hold of that and I tried to build on that. And then we were able to find something to build on from that. But that was the kind of question I asked is, what is something you would like about your job? Or why do you want to still be here? Or what do you get out of this? And we were able to build on that. Once we found that this person is interested in being part of the solution going forward, now we need to brainstorm some solutions and then pick one and agree to both of us doing something. This is really important in a difficult conversation, is you both agree to do something. Now, you as the leader, you may agree to simply do step number 7, to follow up with this person in 2 weeks and to see how they're doing. Or you may say, I'm going to retrain you on this, or I'm going to look at your schedule, or I'm going to have a meeting with my boss to see if we can accommodate this request you've had. I'm going to look at your current job description to see if maybe we have altered it without having a discussion with you. I'm going to look at the job site and see if there's something we can do there. Whatever it is, you both need to agree to do something. And it's important that you document what you both have agreed to do, and you send it in an email right after the conversation that we both agreed to do these things. That's critical. Because there's nothing worse than a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month after the conversation and they go, hey, how's it going with XYZ? And you go, I didn't promise XYZ, I promised ABC. And now we're back into conflict. So instead, when you send that email, Joe, I talked about I'm going to look at this, this, and this, and you promised that you were going to do this, this, and this, and that we're going to have another meeting on the 14th of November to follow up with each other. All of that makes it crystal clear what everybody's expectations were. Now, I said schedule a follow-up within at least 2 weeks. You know, if it can't be exactly 2 weeks, do your best, but the sooner you can follow up with someone, the better. The reason I say 2 weeks is because people usually need a couple of minutes or some time to sort of do that thing that they said they would do, or you need some time to look into whatever it is you were going to do. But I'll tell you this, dates make things happen, as you guys all know. So the same with the difficult conversation and the resolution we're looking for is put in follow-ups. Now, you may require more than one follow-up. That's fine. But at least put the first one in writing in that follow-up email of what we both agreed to do. So I'll leave it there for now. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this slide? And then after this, we'll jump into some of the scenarios that you guys have provided. Comments or questions, anybody? Oh, it was really that good, eh? Okay, good to hear. All right, let's go to scenario number 1. So again, these were submitted by you guys. So if you are the person that submitted the scenario and you want to pipe in, that's great. Give your feedback. This is number 1. What I've done is I've included those 7 steps beside each of these so that we can look at, would any of these steps be applicable to this particular scenario? So scenario 1 is talking with older employees about change and moving forward. A lot of time we get the most pushback from them and they refuse to do the job that the manager is assigning to them. So what do we think is at play here? Do we think that this is intent? Is this perception? Is this emotion? What's at play here?
Emotion, for sure.
Okay, why do you see emotion?
I see emotion because a lot of people who are generally did have done the job for, 15, 20 years have a hard time changing things because they see that, it's working. Trying to incorporate new procedures with them, I feel that they don't see the bigger picture because they're so set in their ways.
Okay, great feedback. Anybody else want to jump in?
It's the fear of change. Like
Right.
they've been comfortable with the current structure and if things are gonna change.
So here's another question for you. How many of you think, well, this is hard, I can't see everybody, but how many of you think that people fear change? Do most of us fear change?
I think everybody does. There's a change management procedure across a lot of corporate companies for that reason.
Very good. Now, I disagree a little bit. I think human beings love change because we constantly try new foods, new clothing, new hairstyles, new movies, new vacations. We love change. You know what we don't like? We don't like change that we feel is forced on us. That's the difference. So if I'm an older employee who I've been doing the same job for a number of years, I feel pretty confident in myself and my abilities. I'm now getting a change, and whether or not you believe you've explained the why to this person or not, let's say you have, they haven't understood the why. And especially, they haven't understood the why as it applies to them. So, what happens is if I've been really good at my job for a number of years and now I have to change, in my mind, I'm going back to zero. I'm going from a 10, I'm excellent at this, to now I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And as I get older, I start to feel scared. I start to feel replaceable. I start to feel like I'm being diminished. I am not saying that's your intent, but that's the intent as an older worker I'm reading into this scenario. So I'm sure all of you have heard of WIFM, WIIFM. It's what's in it for me. That is what we have to talk about in a difficult conversation like this. You can explain the why. Here's why we're changing as an organization. But more importantly, Mr. Employee, here's why we need you to change, because here's what's in it for you. And when you can spend the time going through that, at least you have a fighting chance to get them to be interested in the why. A lot of times when they hear change, they make assumptions about the intent of the company is to get rid of me. The intent of my manager is to make me look stupid. The intent of the organization is to just go with younger people. Whatever story that person's telling themselves, that's what's affecting this conversation. So we need to start with facts. The facts are the why we are changing. And there's two whys. There's the corporate why, which I'll be honest with you, a lot of times employees don't give a shit about. Sorry, Kate, I swore. I said I would try not to, but I did.
That's okay.
I can't help it. They don't care about, sorry. But also the what's in it for me why. Why is this going to affect me? And why should I care? And why is it going to make my life either better or different or what? So to me, we need to get the facts. The facts are the why. We need to talk about the impact. That's the what's in it for me. What will I get out of this change? We need to let them have their feelings expressed, because I can tell you right now, unexpressed emotions show up later in really, really bad behavior. So let them get some stuff off their chest. If they're scared, let them tell you, and don't punish somebody for telling you that they're scared. You can say, you know what, I'm a little scared of this too. Changes sucks. Sometimes it's scary, but you know what? Let's try to find why this makes sense for both of us. Again, focus on what the change is, not just that person. And then if you can find some type of common ground with this person, okay, what is your biggest fear of this change? That's a great question. Is what are you most concerned about? A lot of times it is, I'm not going to be able to pick up this new software. I'm not going to be able to figure this out. What I do works already. Why are we doing this? Find some type of common ground to start with. If it's a training issue, talk about they can get extra training. Talk about how you're going to do the training with them at the same time. They're not going to be alone. Whatever the solution is, you can work with. And then there's another thing about change too, and that ties into this solution part. to get people to be interested in change and to want to positively be part of it, do something that's called quick wins, small wins. Help people get some quick wins in their learning of the new change so that they build their confidence quickly. If the change is going to take months or years to incorporate, I want to do something that within the next day or two, they're already feeling better about themselves getting involved with it. I'm going to over celebrate their successes early on so that they get confident and they want to do the next one and then the next one. So I take their learning and I shrink it down into hourly or daily stuff that I want them to catch on to. I'm going to micromanage them a little bit more too, because I want them to know they're not alone. And then as their confidence grows, my micromanaging diminishes. I leave them to themselves more and more. I hope that was helpful with that scenario. Does anybody else have a comment or anything to add around scenario 1? Or if not, we'll move on to scenario 2. Okay. Scenario number 2. A corporate client's event delivery arrived late, causing their setup team to fall behind. They are frustrated and have expressed disappointment about the lack of communication and impact on their timeline. Now, this never happens, right? Oh, see, I see a couple people laughing. That's good. All right. So who wants to jump in with a thought on this scenario?
I think these kind of scenarios are super hard because they're reactive. They're not a proactive thing, which kind of already puts us behind the ball. So it's almost like no matter how tactfully or gracefully we can go about it, we're already kind of 2 steps behind in the client's mind. But normally it's just trying to get really quick, fast communication with our teams, a nice quick resolve, a quick ETA, being very apologetic, communicating you understand their frustrations, relate to them on a human level, and kind of just make the best of the situation. I mean, yeah, you try and ease it to the point where it's palatable, and then you kind of deal with compensation on the back end is usually what works best for me.
Great points. That's great points. Anybody else want to jump in?
I think it's the empathy really comes in to play there.
100%.
It's
Now, you
also
might even
important
want a
to-
little bit of sympathy too.
I was gonna say, like, exactly, no,
Yeah.
exactly.
You might want both.
Yeah.
Now, the one
think
thing
it's
I
important
will,
to
please go in.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I think it's important to acknowledge, like, early on in the conversation that they're experiencing frustration with us. Like, they wanna hear early in the conversation that you have that empathy or that sympathy for what they're going through.
Absolutely. Justify their feelings. Great point. Justify their feelings. Let them know that they're okay. So this is a reverse difficult conversation. And this is someone now having it with you, right? So we're not leading it. Pardon me. So the first thing is I still want to start with facts. I still want to know what specifically are they looking for and what specifically did we promise, and to make sure we're on the same page, because I'm sure there have been times where the client thinks X and we actually thought Y and it didn't deliver. Your point about apologizing is a fantastic point. I would just put the caveat in that an apology without a solution is just words. So make sure that apology comes with, I am super sorry and here's what we are going to do. So I know sometimes that can cause you to not respond as quick as you'd like to, because you want to make sure you have a solution. But that definitely brings that anger down a drop if you can have that apology with a solution attached to it. And then, like you said, we can sort out the details of the expenses later. How do you guys feel about common ground here? What is a common ground we could find in this particular scenario?
I think common ground here is really, it's hard because you also don't want to express frustration because you want to present a professional kind of unified front and confidence in the service. So you don't want to also say, well, I'm equally as frustrated. This shouldn't have happened, because that's not, I don't think that's super helpful.
No. Diminishes
maybe-
you and your company.
Yeah, maybe common ground, as you both want to see a quick and easy resolve, and you're going to work your hardest to try and get that for the client.
Absolutely. So they're going to say the common ground is I want all my stuff fixed. We need to prioritize what is the one thing we can react to the quickest and get resolved the fastest. That's the thing I would focus on as a common ground. What's that one thing I can nail right away? A quick win, small win, to get the person to believe you're on top of this and you're doing something, but you're actually making some type of progress.
You can help with another team being dispatched to the event to help set up for the client as fast as possible.
Great point. So not only are we being reactive to this and taking it serious, we're also willing to eat some cost on this to make up for what we did. So we're showing you how important you are and how serious this is. That's more than common ground. That's really taking full responsibility, right? Excellent. Anybody else with a thought or a comment around this scenario?
Harry, you had your hand up. Did you want to say anything?
Actually, it was explained by
Okay.
Katie Reeds.
Okay, perfect.
We have the same point. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Let's go on to scenario number 3. A situation where a team member consistently reacts negatively to changes in work processes, event details, or operational updates. Their responses often involve anger and heightened emotion, which unintentionally disrupts those around them and undermines their own professional reputation. There's a lot to peel here. Who has Kate, what do you think about this one? This one seems right up your alley.
Oh, wow. I was hoping you'd hit me on more of the HR related ones, but
okay. Well, what are the facts here?
Well, there's perception I see, because I'm just trying to read if there's facts that they are like what their reaction is. So I don't know if that's a fact because it's a reaction.
Yeah.
Someone's perception of their reaction.
Yeah, it's a perception, right? Somebody
Yeah.
perceives this person reacts negatively.
Yeah.
So this could be what? This could be conflict of personalities. It could be lack of clear expectations. We need to get to what the facts are here. So somebody give me a question that you might start this conversation off to try and find out what the facts are.
How do you feel about the changes in our work processes?
Great. So you could start on one particular thing. The reason why okay, here's a better question. Why do we think someone reacts heightened anger, heightened emotion, unintentionally disrupts others? Why do you think somebody reacts that way?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed? Absolutely. What else?
You can
Harry?
speak it.
I'll bring back the point that their fear of change. Like, they
Fear.
already set their plans. Everything was laid out like to the team, but then there's this sudden change that
100%.
sometimes cannot be accommodated, or some sort of will affect on the totality of outcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great response. Anybody else want to jump in?
Maybe lack of resources that they have to deal with the change.
Absolutely. Now, when we look at this with the facts over opinions, the facts are their behaviors. Their behaviors are facts, right? So if they are upset, if they are angry, if they are speaking rudely, if they're speaking loudly, those are behavioral responses to something. But that doesn't mean they're wrong. That just means they're having a behavior reaction to something. So if I'm their leader, what I'm reading through that behavior, and again, this is a challenge because it could be an assumption, but I have to verify it through my questions, is this seems like a scared person to me. This seems like someone who's not confident and who is scared of something. And my job would be to, let's go over the facts versus opinions. So what is it that they're scared of? That's what I want to get to the bottom of. And now I'm not going to say to the words, hey, Joe, you seem scared. What are you scared of? Because now Joe's going to either feel like an idiot or feel put on the spot or feel diminished. I'm going to say, Joe, let's talk about the changes we've been implementing lately. How are you feeling about those? And then I'm going to see what he zeroes in on. And whatever those points he zeroes in on, then I'm just going to try and peel the onion a bit on those and find out, why are you feeling this way about that? Because chances are, and again, I'm making assumptions here, chances are he doesn't have all the facts of his own, and he is then filling in the blanks with his own story of some kind. So I would start with diving into what particularly about the new changes or the new work processes or whatever it is we're talking about are you most concerned with? Are you most troubled with? Are you most feeling isn't working? Whatever the language is you want to use, I would start with that question, zero in on what he says, and then peel that onion as much as possible till you can find out what's really there. Now, next you need to talk about the impact of the behavior, but it's also his impact is because he's scared or because he's feeling not confident or he's feeling frustrated. Those things are all sort of the same sort of emotional framework. I need to say, what could we do to maybe make this easier for you? What could we dig into to make this better? Pardon me, this is where the common ground might be additional training or spending more time with them on something, or do I need to re-explain why we're doing this or what's in it for him? We need to go back to that change conversation we had earlier, is to dive in to see, is he understanding his role in this new change? Is he understanding the benefits of this new change? Is he understanding the impact of his contribution to this change? Those are the things that I need to focus on to then agree to some type of solution out of this, which could be training, more conversations, job shadowing, whatever those solutions are. Does anyone have a different opinion on that or a different way they would tackle it?
Hi, Larry, this is Ryan. I'm just wondering if maybe, I'm still kind of keyed in on the word consistently in that description. And I think that, what you're saying all makes a lot of sense to me, and it's great guidance. But I think when I'm looking at this situation, I'm looking at it as someone that no matter what happens, they're having this reaction because it's consistently reacting this way. So I'm wondering more if it's maybe there needs to be some more discovery around attitude, behaviors, or what is, maybe it's personal, maybe there's something else that's not within our control necessarily that might be causing them to consistently react no matter what the change is or the situation they're presented with.
Great point, Ryan. What I read into that when you just, the way you just laid it out, which was great, is that this member their behavior has been allowed to be in place for a long time, if it's consistently, and it's never been properly addressed. So yes, there are some individuals that any change sends them into a tailspin, 100%. There are some individuals that have a negative outlook on life versus a positive outlook on life. Absolutely. So that's a Kate issue. She hired the wrong person. No, I'm only kidding, Kate. But in all seriousness, consistently means to me that this behavior or behaviors or something like that has been allowed to happen before, and we've never properly resolved it. We've never worked on how they talk to people or how they sit in meetings or how they how they contribute to the change, or they've been allowed to just be negative, and no one wants to deal with it, so we just let it fester. And every time we do this, we're in this cycle of negativity. So again, I'm not pointing the finger just at the leader, but I believe leadership has a big factor in that. If we have consistently the same behavior, it's because we have not addressed it. That's my opinion. Anybody else want to agree or disagree with that statement? Ryan, you can jump back in as well if you disagree.
No, I agree with you. That
Okay.
makes a lot of sense.
So it's not easy.
Leader's a bit of a big word, though, because a lot of people I just want to make sure we frame that properly. A leader could be anybody in that situation, having to deal with this person on a day-to-day basis if they are having such reactions.
Right. And that's why I use the word leadership too, because it's not just that person's leader, it's leadership in general. So, and again, leadership isn't attached to title, it's attached to action. So who in the team can help us with Joe's consistently negative behavior? Joe also has to take some responsibility for this too at some point. It's a dual role here. So I, as the leader, can meet you halfway, and then you have to come and meet me partway. So if it's consistently, I think it's because we've ignored it, or we didn't know how to deal with it, or it's just easier to pretend it wasn't happening. At the same time, I mean, as a leader, I may not feel equipped to deal with that. I'm not Dr. Phil. I don't know how to sit down with somebody and talk about their negativity. That's when you can go to leadership and talk about, is this a team approach, or are there other people that can help me, or get other people involved to help me work with Joe to find out why they feel so upset or so off track on this. Any other comments or thoughts on scenario number 3? All right, let's move on to number 4. How can you respectfully communicate to your manager that your workload is already full and that taking on more tasks may affect the quality of your work or your ability to meet deadlines? Okay, I see this one a lot too. Would anybody like to jump in as a starting point?
Facts,
Pardon?
like sharing the facts, whether
Right.
it's the number of emails, the number of projects, the number of whatever it is, but quantifying the workload.
Great point. Not everyone fully understands every one of their employees' workloads. And also, people work at different paces, different styles. So I think this is a conversation to sit down, and I'm not saying this to be disrespectful, but let's both act like adults in this scenario, and let's not focus on who's right or wrong, or who's forcing me to do this or not do that. Let's talk about my actual workload and the actual projects I'm working on. At the same time, I've seen this a lot too, where an employee believes these are the things they should be working on, but the manager believes these are the things they should be working on, and they're not lined up. So one question I recommend as a leader, you ask your staff regularly is, what do you think I think are your top 3 priorities right now? I know that might sound like a silly question, but a lot of times you'll get a different answer than what you were expecting. What do you think I think are your top 3 priorities? Because sometimes they may have work that you didn't give them. I've seen, I call it work by title. My manager gave me this job, but then the president walked in and asked me to do something. So I just pushed everything off my desk and took the stuff that the president gave me because that title was bigger than my manager's title. So I thought I better do it. Meanwhile, the president was like, oh, I didn't need that right away. I just wanted to give that to you. So it's setting clear expectations. So when you said facts, 100%, what are the facts of what are the deadlines of the work you're working on? What is the impact of the work you're doing on? What's the priority of the work you're working on? Let's reorganize this together because not everything can be important. So I would start there. And then I would try to find some type of common ground about how can we help you get this work done? So is there another resource or something else we can do, or can we adjust timelines, or can we move something? I think it's just having that adult conversation about facts over feelings here, not even opinions, just feeling that if I'm feeling overwhelmed, that can drain me of energy, and it also can drain me of problem solving skills. So I just feel overwhelmed and I feel buried, where the boss can come in and say, okay, let's lay out your work life here. Let's see what's an actual priority, what's a pretend priority, and also what resources are you lacking to get these things done, and what can I do to help get some things moved around. That's to me an initial way to look at it. I think then you would both commit to, once the new work schedule is put together, I'm going to check in with you, not in 2 weeks. I'm probably going to check in with you in a few days, and again, probably in a week, so that I think my follow-up would be a little more frequent. Does anybody have a different take or something else they'd like to add to this scenario?
I think sometimes people tend to bite off more than they could chew, and maybe they're not able to say no. So anytime a manager asks them to do something, they might just keep saying yes, and then their workload becomes overwhelming.
That is a great point. So as the leader, what do you think you could do to help that employee? If you're the boss of this employee, what do you think? And you know that they're a people pleaser. What do you think you could do?
Harry?
Oh yes. What I actually do is to check on the actual workload, and try not to assign too much to a single person. If you think as a manager that will take a particular job or a project needs like 2 or 3 person, or you need to balance. You need to find balance. Right.
100%.
You don't just throw in tasks that you think is not possible or feasible to accomplish.
Great point. Great point.
And
I
we're a
always-
team, and we're all a team, right? Like, to Harry's point of like, can we work together and bring others in to alleviate that overwhelmness?
Yes. So what other resources can be brought in? 100%. Anybody else with a thought?
I think deadlines are really important. So if I assign a task to my employees, I always provide a deadline, and I ask them if they're able to achieve that deadline. And I expect them to be honest with me. And sometimes they'll say, Kate, no, like I can't meet the deadline. Okay, let's work on a deadline that works together. Like, what makes sense? So then you're having an adult conversation, and you're compromising as best as possible. Obviously, there are some deadlines that can't get moved, but then it's okay, then the leader steps in, or they bring in another coworker to help, because that employee has identified. So I think it's just important for the employee to be honest too. I know there's times where employees often say, oh, I can do it. Like DJ said, like people pleaser and want to take everything on. But I think, we're all adults and everyone needs to be honest, and you need to protect your time.
Yeah, 100%. Now that everyone has to be honest, and that's a challenge because not everybody has that relationship with their boss, right?
True. Yeah.
So if you are a leader, you have to look in the mirror and say, am I creating that environment for my staff where they feel they can say no to me or not right now? And then if it is, like Kate said, well, this is now the top priority, then let's look at your priority list and let's move something off that list now because this has to replace it. We can't just expect you're going to go home and work another 20 hours this week, or you're going to work on the weekend. Let's make this work for each other. So for me, the common ground is communication, right? Open, respectful communication. If I'm the leader in the situation, am I making sure my employee feels confident and trusting in me that they can have this kind of conversation? And if I'm the employee, I'm going to say, I'm going to bring this up because I want to do a good job. I don't want to just half-ass something. I want to deliver what's actually needed.
And it's
Comments or
And I
questions?
also believe it's up to the managers to know how much task is being put on that employee, and to help them with that.
You know what? That's a great point. I think that ties into sometimes there's differing perceptions on how long something will take to do. You know, like a manager goes, okay, I need this done. That's probably 2 hours. And they hand it to the employee, and the employee goes, you know, this is an 8-hour job, right? Like, oh, I think it's 2 hours. Have you ever done it? No, but I think it's 2 hours. So it's good to have that quick conversation about, like Kate said, she always loves to give deadlines. Absolutely 100%. I think that's a hard and fast rule. I also think it's a good question to say, how long do you think something like this might take you? They can give a ballpark. Like, oh, this is going to require X, Y, and Z. Oh, I didn't realize that was part of it. Hey, maybe I could take a piece of that for you, whatever. But it's good to see sometimes even up front, which is a fact, how long do you think something might take? Okay, excellent points on number 4. Really good. Okay, we still good for time?
We've hit our time limit, so if we can try to keep things moving a little quicker. I know a lot of people had to drop because they had other calls at 1:30,
Yeah,
but
people got to go.
this has been good. This has been really good conversation, though.
All right, well, we'll just jump to the next one. How can you handle a situation where a colleague consistently doesn't show up for work or works much slower, and it starts to affect the team workload and morale? This one is challenging because if it's a colleague, that means you are an equal. So if you're not, if you don't have a title, then it could be, who the hell are you? You're not my boss. Why are you bringing this up? So then we get into a real argument. This one to me is very, very delicate. And also in my experience, this doesn't go well if there's not a lot of trust between the two individuals. If there's no trust or a very low trust, this will automatically turn into an argument or a who the hell do you think you are conversation. At the same time, if you go to your boss, now you're a tattletale and you're a rat or whatever other words they want to use, and now we have more conflict. What we hope is that we don't have a absent leader here, and they're recognizing that things are happening and they can get in line. I know that's the dream scenario, but at the same time, leaders have to pull their head up from their desks at times and take a look around and see how my team's performing. Now, all of you who are leaders have stars on your team, and then you have okay performers, and then we sometimes have poor performers. And usually the result is the star gets more work to make up for that. So we have to keep our eye on that. At the same time, people work at different paces. So if someone's working slow, the fact is, do they need more training, or are they just not equipped to do this? Are they in the wrong seat on the bus, right? As they say from the book, Good to Great. Are they just in the wrong role where they really can't handle this? So I don't encourage employees who don't have a high level of trust to have these conversations, because I find it snowballs into conflict and arguments. So I know that's not a great answer. I do want employees to come to me as their boss. I don't want it to be a blame conversation. I want it to be a, how do we help each other? But I hope that the leader has their head up from their desk periodically to see some of this. Sorry, Kate, is that what I went through that kind of quick? Is that okay? All right, we'll jump to the next one.
Good.
How can you approach a situation where your manager's style feels very hands-on or micromanaging, and it's starting to feel like there's a lack of trust? What's the best way to have an open conversation about wanting more autonomy without sounding defensive? So again, why do people micromanage people? It's usually a trust issue, and it could be not just a trust of the employee, but a trust of yourself. So some people are controlling, and I don't trust that I can let this person go on their own. Micromanaging is a trust issue. So my advice is that if you're the employee in this situation, I would sit down with the manager, and I would hopefully could have an adult conversation about, I am feeling, now this is an opinion, not a fact, but I am feeling micromanaged. And then I would try to give specific examples of whatever that micromanaging is, which becomes a fact. And I would say, on this occasion, and this occasion, and this occasion, you did this, this, and this. I believe in my abilities that I can do X, Y, and Z, but it feels like through your behavior with me or our interactions that you're not trusting me. Can we talk about what is concerning you that would cause us for you to feel that way? If you don't have that kind of trust with your boss, then it's a much different conversation. Then I would go back and say, boss, whatever their name is, as it relates to, and then whatever the thing is you're being micromanaged, how do you think I'm performing with that? How do you think I'm doing? And get them to tell you where the shortcomings may be or the challenges. If they say, I think you're nailing it, then that opens the door for you to say, well, I'm feeling a little micromanaged in this role, and here's why. And then present the facts, if you can, of how they micromanaged you. So that's the two ways that I would approach that. If you think you can have that direct adult conversation, that's obviously the best. If not, address that specific thing and ask your boss how you feel you're performing with that. And then whatever is said from there, you can dig into those in a more specific way to find some common ground about how we can work together. And if they feel you need more training, or sure, let's talk about what that looks like. That's a solution we can both commit to doing. And then if I achieve this level of expertise, boss, do you believe that you won't feel as the need to micromanage me? You can have that sort of conversation. I know my questions are awkward right now because I'm sort of doing them on the fly here, but that's the style of the conversations I would have. Does anybody else want to jump in
I
with
think
anything?
just to kind of chime in on that too, Larry, some people are really uncomfortable having that conversation with their boss. So, you know, our HR team is very available to sit in as a third party to have those conversations with the employee and the manager. So don't hesitate to reach out to anyone on the HR team. Happy to sit in and have those conversations with you. So you kind of have that unbiased middle person that can sit in and help direct that conversation.
Great point. Thank you for that. Number 7, after being with the company for several years and taking on more responsibilities, how can you confidently and respectfully start a conversation about a salary increase or compensation review? Yeah, this one comes up a lot. My advice is, I don't recommend employees go to their boss and say, I want a raise. That I've never seen it not turn into some type of weird conversation. What I do recommend, and my thinking on this is different. So if you don't agree with this, and Kate, if I'm in trouble, just mute me and kick me out the thing. I believe you go to your boss and say, I would like to make X. And I would have a number in mind. If it's an hourly number or salary number, whatever it is, I would like to get to X. I want to know from you, what am I lacking to get there? Or what is my path to get there? Or what does it look like when I'm making this much money? However you want to word it. And you want to find out, I want to find common ground with how far do they think I am from that number compared to where I think I am from that number. I might think I'm at that number today and they're like, oh, you are so far from that number, it's not funny. Or, you know, you're pretty close, but I need you to do X, Y, Z. Then you, at least as the employee, can say, am I prepared to do those things that my boss is saying? Or do I think it's unreasonable or whatever? Then you can have a different conversation. But at least by having the conversation of, I would like to make X, what is the path to X? And then I have a clear picture of it. Then I could have now a fact-based conversation. And I can also try to find some type of solution that we both commit to doing something to getting me to that number. Now, some of you may say, well, my boss doesn't affect raises. Okay, then in that case, your boss now becomes an ally to you to help you get a raise. So now your boss goes to their boss to say, hey, employee X came to me with a very valid discussion about they want to get to making this number. I really think they're valuable. I think they're not quite there yet, but they're prepared to put the work in. Can I come back and make them a promise that if they do X, Y, Z, that we will pay them, you know, whatever that number is? That to me is the best scenario I've seen that works. It shows that you're a team player and you're prepared to do what's needed, which makes the company happy, but also you get a solid commitment from your boss or whoever to say, we're committed to helping you get there. If you're really far apart, then that's a much more difficult conversation that we don't have time to get into today. Was that okay, Kate? I'm not in
Yep.
trouble with HR? All
No,
right.
no, I think that's a very reasonable explanation and steps.
All right. How can you set boundaries with a teammate who frequently tries to shift their tasks onto you in a way that stays professional and polite without creating tension or coming across as uncooperative? So again, this is that colleague to colleague situation. Again, if you have trust with this person, then you need to have a direct adult conversation. If you don't, then you need to have a conversation with your boss. If there's no trust there, I just can't emphasize enough that it's going to turn into an argument. It just absolutely is. At the same time, you can say no. You can say no to people if it's truly not something that is a responsibility. Now, I'm not a believer in saying that's not my job. That's not a good attitude to ever have in an organization. With that said, people are compensated for the time and effort they put in at your organization, so they all have responsibilities to do, including you. So if you already have a full plate, you can say to that person, well, I'd like to help you right now. I don't have capacity to do that. Or if you really need help with this, maybe you should go to our boss and then maybe they can help you find some resources to help you with that. Again, I wouldn't get into an argument or a, hey, that's your job, not mine, any of that kind of stuff, because that's just all fighting. I would just say, I can't help you right now. My plate is full. Or why don't you go see boss and maybe they can help you with this scenario. Is that fair? Okay. Lastly, how do you handle terminating an employee when you feel bad for them? You just say all's forgiven, don't fire them.
Please don't.
I'm kidding. I want you to remember something. I'll try to be real quick here. When someone is being fired, and I'm not talking about having a tough conversation. I mean, when you are at the point where you are firing this person, it should really never be a surprise to that person. You have more than likely, as a leader, done so many things to bring it to this point. You have had difficult conversations. You have done retraining. You have had written warnings. You've had verbal warnings, maybe even a suspension. You've had other leaders get involved. They might have even had a chat with Kate and her team at some point about this. When it comes time, they have fired themselves. You really have not fired them. Because if you've done all those things, you've given this person multiple opportunities to correct their poor behavior, and they have chosen not to do it. So I hope no one really feels good about firing people, although there are the odd person that, you're not overly upset about. But at the most part, you will feel bad for letting someone go. But I truly, truly believe if it's at this point and you are a good leader who's diligent with your people, you have probably gone way beyond trying to help them, and they just have not been willing to help themselves. So to me, this conversation is very short. It's not even a conversation. It's sort of a statement of we have done X, Y, and Z, which are the facts. And based on the fact that you haven't come and met us part way, we're letting you go effective today. And I don't like to belabor these. I don't like to turn them into conversations. I like to be quick and onward and outward. And I always make sure I have a pal in the room. If I don't have another manager, I get HR in the room with me. And it's not a discussion, it's a statement, and then we get them out. I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but I really just think people have fired themselves at this point. So Kate, I went 45 minutes over. I apologize, but I thought that was good. I love the discussion. 39 people hung on, so that was great. Thanks so much for including me in this.
This has been awesome. Does anyone have any follow-up questions to Larry that have still been able to stay on? Any feedback, questions? Do we need a Difficult Conversations 2.0 in the upcoming year? Well, I just want to thank Larry. Yeah, lots of hearts, lots of claps.
People might like it.
Lots of messages from everyone saying they had to drop, but like what a great conversation. So Larry, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a very busy person because we are I'm booking a meeting with you to the end of November at this point, early
That's right.
December. So I know you're busy. I really appreciate you taking the time out for our team and helping develop our Elevate with Element lunch and learns. Our team seems to really enjoy them, and hopefully we'll have you part of another discussion in 2026.
I would love it. Thanks so much, guys. Great to see all of you, and some of you I haven't seen in a while. All the best to all of you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great afternoon.